morning. May I have everyone's attention, please? What a wonderful morning. The sun is shining. It's nice outside. I'm really glad you all are here. My name is Darrell Brown. I'm the Director of Economic Development for Charles County. This is our quarterly business roundtable. And I want to thank everyone for being here this morning. As a point of order, I think first what I'd like to do is to recognize there are a few candidates here this morning. And since it is post-primary, I think it is necessary and proper to recognize the winners of the primary elections. Reuben Collins is here this morning. Reuben, congratulations on your victory, and look forward to working with you once we get past the general elections. Arthur Ellis is here this morning. Arthur, congratulations. We also have representatives from Senator Van Hollen's office here this morning. Scott Travers is here. Scott, where are you? Thank you for being here. Please give my regards to the Senator. Betsy Bossert from Congressman Hoyer's office is here. Betsy, thank you for being here. And again, please give my regards to the Congressman. And Gretchen Hardman is here from the Governor's office. Gretchen, thank you for being here. And for all of the business owners and entrepreneurs, Rachel always sneaks in on me. Thank you for being here from Senator Cardin's office, and please give the Senator my regards. Thank you, Rachel. For the business owners and entrepreneurs, thank you for being here this morning. The Quarterly Business Roundtable is really for you, and we appreciate everything that you do in providing opportunities to residents here in Charles County and elsewhere for that matter. As a point of order, this is a roundtable, business roundtable, and while I have acknowledged the primary candidate winners, this is not a political forum, and so as a result, we will not be entertaining political questions, and I would ask that you all give me your cooperation on that. I have to remain consistent. I made the similar statement and asked at our last quarterly roundtable, and out of fairness, we must do the same. So please give me your cooperation on that. With that said, I have a little story that I want to tell you this morning. And I can see Marcia's like, oh Lord, what's he getting ready to do now? But I'll connect it up. This morning, I woke up out of my sleep. Painfully, I had a Charlie horse. And I jump out of bed, and I'm trying to sort myself out. And you know, Charlie horses can be painful, right? Many of you have had them, right? So imagine this. You're hopping out of the bed, you've got a Charlie horse, and you're in pain, and while you're trying to sort that out, I stubbed my toe. Right? So now I've got a stubbed toe Charlie horse, and my wife is sitting there, and she's looking at me like, what is he doing? And you sort it all out, you get yourself together, you react to the situation, and you move on. Well, that's a lot like economic development. We have to be able to be nimble. We have to be able to be responsive to the changing environments. Sometimes it's acts of God, such as tornadoes, which Charles County is very familiar with. Sometimes it's acts of God as it relates to flooding. We've had that. Sometimes it's change in sort of the macroeconomics as it relates to business industries and what sort of impact that has. Whoever thought, for example, that Toys R Us would be closing, right? So as economic development people, we have to be nimble, we have to be reactionary. But in order to be reactionary in the appropriate way, we must first be proactive, right? In order to be effective in responding to changing circumstances, you have to be proactive first. And the reason why I say that is because if you're in constant mode of just reacting to the things that happen, you never really are able to focus and move forward as a community, as an organization. So, our 5-year strategic economic development plan is that proactive document, all right? It keeps us focused. Actually, it's not my document. It's not the department's document. It is your document. It is your plan. Remember, this plan came up from the bottom up. It came from the community. It was at your recommendations, your suggestions, that this plan represents. And so for the past 2 years, we have been executing on that plan. And during our quarterly business roundtable meetings, we try to present to you in the most coherent way as possible how we're executing on the plan. Now, you can see that the plan has 3 categories: execute effectively, tell our story, and enhancing the product. And each and every time we have a quarterly business roundtable, the presentations that we give address one of those categories. And today, we have 2 presentations that we're going to give you, and they're going to be very brief. And the reason they're going to be very brief is because at the last quarterly business roundtable, we received feedback from you, and that feedback was, we would like to have more time for Q&A. Right? So we decided to streamline our presentations this morning for that purpose, to allow more time for Q&A. So our first presentation will be about our new business outreach program. It's called BREE. And that is it's a new program designed to reach out to the business community and provide and deliver a service to the business community. And Lucretia Freeman Buster, our Chief of Business Development, will be here this morning to provide a brief overview on that. I think it's worthwhile re-mentioning. We talked about it a little bit at the last quarterly business roundtable, but I think we need to talk about it a little more just to refresh your memory, because it is a new program, and we're putting a lot of resources behind it, and it is for the business community. Second, we'll give a brief presentation on opportunity zones, and there's been a lot of conversations around that. The Maryland Independent has reported on that, and that is something that we are really proud that we were able to get 3 designations here in Charles County. And Taylor Ewell, our redevelopment manager, will be giving and providing that presentation. After which, our media department will come up and give a brief presentation on something I think that you will find interesting, and I think that you will like that as well. And then we will go into the Q&A session. All right? So that's sort of the agenda for this morning. That's the plan. Marcia, did I get it all? Okay. And so with that, we shall begin. Lucretia? Thank you.
Good morning. Again, my name is Lucretia Freeman Buster, and I'm the Chief of Business Development. And I'm going to briefly go over the business retention and expansion program. As Darrell said, this is a new program. It's new to Charles County, but this is a nationally recognized program. And a lot of communities within the United States and Canada have implemented this program, and the results have been powerful for small businesses. And we are adapting some of those rules to implement the program here in Charles County. So I'm just going to give a brief update. Again, this is a core economic development program. As I previously stated, a lot of communities have executed this program, and it has really benefited the businesses within their jurisdiction. This is a two-part program. The first part is an outreach. We going to go out to businesses. We have done some research. We will be selecting up to maybe 100 businesses, conduct interviews to understand what's going on within the business community. And then at the end, we can then develop long-range economic development plans to help these businesses address some of those issues and concerns going on within the business operation. I'm going to be the lead representative for this program. I have brought on board two Bradian consultants, and I will introduce them. Dr. Margaret Durecki, can you please come up? And also Kim Muzingo. Lucinia Monday is our business development specialist, but she's not here today. And also Martin is part of my team. He may not be working directly on the BRE program, but he's part of this team. We would be the one that will go out and conduct the interviews with the businesses. And we also will be forming a task force that will work along with us on development projects that we will develop at the end of this program. And that's it, pretty much. So we'll be open for question and answer at the end. And thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give a brief update on opportunity zones. Has everybody here heard of the opportunity zones? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, that's encouraging. The Department of Treasury has approved the 149 opportunity zones in the state of Maryland. We've got 3, as you might be aware, the town of Indian Head, and then a large area to the east of 301, and a smaller area to the west of 301, but those both extend from the Prince George's County line all the way down to Route 5 Berry Road. So fairly significant areas, and they encompass not only the Waldorf Urban Redevelopment Corridor, but the Waldorf Station, the project that's planned by Greenberg Gibbons as well. And then, of course, the town of Indian Head. This is a federal program. It is really between the investor and the IRS. These opportunity zones, essentially, if there's a project that is going in and they want to take advantage of the tax incentive, they need to create an opportunity fund, which is administered by an opportunity fund manager, who would typically be a tax professional, either an attorney or an accountant. So how do these work? Just very briefly, I guess the best scenario for an opportunity fund is a 10-year hold. And it's tied into capital gains. So if you're an investor and you sell an asset, it could be real estate, it could be a security, something of that nature, and you have a capital gain of, let's say, $1 million. So, and we call that unrealized because you haven't taken it out and put it in your savings account yet. So what you can do to take advantage of this incentive program is take that money and invest it into an opportunity fund in an opportunity zone. That could be some sort of redevelopment project, a new building, any number of things. Now, the first thing that happens is your tax is deferred on the reinvestment of that capital gain. So you don't owe any taxes in the year that it's invested, nor will you have to pay taxes on it until the end of the 10-year period. Another advantage to it is the basis is raised for that, and it's counterintuitive. When you raise the basis on an investment, you actually lower the amount that would be subject to tax. So in this case, if you put in $1 million at the end of the 10-year period, you would only be taxed on $850,000 of that investment. So there's a tax break there. If the investment is held for a minimum of 10 years again, whatever capital gains you make on that next investment, if it's another $1 million, the tax on that appreciation is totally forgiven. So it is a very, very strong incentive for investors. And there's still a lot of questions associated with this program. There will be a seminar. It's going to be hosted by the Department of Commerce, Maryland Department of Commerce, Tuesday, July 31st at the University of Maryland. So if you're interested in learning more about these opportunity zones, we would strongly urge you to sign up and attend this conference where a lot of questions that we don't have the answers to yet will be answered. So that wraps it up for my portion of this, and I guess we'll transition into media.
Thank you.
You want that?
Nope, I just have the one slide, but we can leave it here. All right, hello everybody, how are you? My name is Brent Huber. I am, Kim's going to show me the cups. I am with the Charles County Government Media. I'm a video production specialist is my official title, but I've been doing a lot of other really neat things, and that's podcasting. Everybody familiar with podcasting? Yeah? Anybody listen to really any good podcast? Nobody's raising your hands. Oh no. Well, we've got some good ones coming for you. What you need to know, first of all, is how to get to our podcasts. You can't listen to them if you can't get to them. So if you go to iTunes, or what Apple is now calling Apple Podcast, and you search on Charles County Government up there, you will find a collection of podcasts. Right now we have one that our county administrator Mike Malinoff is doing called Open Mic with Mike. It's kind of a lighter side version of his monthly report. He has staff members come in and he talks about topics, and he's got some community members that come in. And we just recorded one on Tuesday with Martin on agriculture and the arts in Charles County. So that one will be out very soon. You'll also find when you go to iTunes or Google Play a series of meetings. So all of our meetings are now available on iTunes. We've got a little bit of cleaning up there to do, but you'll see them Charles County Government meetings, and you can scroll through the list and pick the meeting that you want to listen to. Beyond that, we have another podcast that will be released very soon. We are in production of something called Inside Your County Government. I'm hosting a few of those. Kim will host a couple of those. And we're talking to people in the community, and we are talking to county employees. And we have a lot of really interesting county employees, people that have been around for 20, 25, 30, even 40 years. And we're going to get their stories out and talk about how things work inside county government. So check us out on iTunes on your desktop, Apple Podcast on your mobile devices, and how are we doing that? Anybody that has a question gets one? Anybody that has a question about podcasts gets a really cool podcast cup. Or any question. Uh-oh. Okay. Yeah, really cool podcast cup. So that's what we got.
I'm going to follow Taylor's example here. And yes, we're going to get into our Q&A in just a second, and anyone who asks a question will get one of the Charles County Media mugs. But first, a couple of things that I want to mention to you, and that is our annual fall meeting is coming up on Tuesday, October 30th. The theme this year is going to be workforce. We're going to talk a lot about the workforce in Charles County. We just completed a workforce study that was done for us by the Regional Economic Studies Institute, RESI, at Towson University. Very, very meaty study about the commuters that are leaving Charles County every day to go to work in other jurisdictions. it's a question that's been asked a lot. Where are they going? What are they doing? What are their capabilities? What are their occupations? What industries are they in? That study answers a lot of those questions. So we're going to be talking a lot about that in the months to come. And Dr. Darius Irani, who is the chief economist with RISI, is going to be coming down to present that study. We're going to talk about workforce development and the workforce development that goes on in Charles County, what we're doing to not only help the workers that we currently have in the county, but also to create the workforce of the future. It's going to be a really interesting meeting, so mark it on your calendar, Tuesday, October 30th, 8 a.m. to 12 noon, and you'll be hearing a lot more about it in the coming weeks and months. The other thing is we always like to get your feedback about our events, so if you got a survey, please be sure to fill it out before you leave today and leave it behind. Or we'll be sending out an email later on with a link that you can do the survey online, but we always want to hear from you. And with that, we are going to open it up for our Q&A period. So the staff is going to come up here. We've also asked John Stevens to join us. John Stevens is the Chief of Capital Services for Charles County Government, and he's in charge of a lot of the construction and infrastructure projects. So he's here today because infrastructure is necessary for economic development. So we have asked him to join us in case you have questions about that. And we will have a microphone that's going to go around. Michelle is going to be, Michelle and Martin both are going to be working the microphones, and they'll hold it for you for anybody who has questions. So if you'd like, just raise your hand and we'll start answering the questions for you.
Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to get an update, please, on the Waldorf Urban Redevelopment Corridor program, please.
Okay, I'll start. And John, let me get next to you. Well, the planning for infrastructure improvements continues apace for the Waldorf Urban Redevelopment Corridor. There are a number of development projects that have been proposed that are sort of in a holding pattern, waiting for sewer upgrades and so forth. And John, I'll let you address sort of the timeline and where we are with infrastructure.
Okay, good morning. And again, my name is John Stevens. I'm the Chief of Capital Services. For about 2 years, we've been working on the design. We first did a study. Now we're working on a design for the infrastructure. That infrastructure includes upgrading the sewer system for that Waldorf Urban Development Corridor, as well as upgrading the water and the roadway. We're about, I would say, 60% on the water and sewer, and this also includes upgrading and handling the stormwater management issues and associated needs for the stormwater management. We're about 70% design of the roadway, which we are not really encountering many issues, but our main issues that we're encountering right now with the stormwater management design. We're faced with, anyone familiar with the Old Washington Road knows there's a low area, and naturally, when we're talking about handling stormwater management, you want to focus everything draining to the low area. We're looking at when it drains to the low area, it has to be there for a while and then use settlement basins, and then it needs to move on. The only way where we can move it is under the railroad track. So we're facing some issues with elevations and drainage. And as far as the roadway and sewer and water and sewer design, that is progressing well. But there are many challenges that we're facing, and also working with utility companies. You have overhead power, and we have gas lines, and we've been coordinating monthly with the utility companies, and they have certain needs because we want that corridor we want to put most of the utilities, or all of the utilities, under the ground. We did a study years ago, and we have in our planning department envisioned how they wanted this area to look, which involves getting the utilities underground. So that's some other major challenges that we're facing that may require the acquisition of additional land, which costs money, and as well as the cost of relocating those utilities underground. So we are progressing, but we are facing many difficulties and challenges right now.
Let's don't forget this gentleman gets a mug.
And I'd like to add that the work has been and continues to be a priority project for the department. Martin?
Yeah, Vince Hungerford. I'm a concerned citizen of Western Charles County. And I'm going to throw this at John Stevens. I asked a question at the summit that had in the fall about 2 years ago. Asked a question about what you were doing about getting sewage to the airport. And if my question wasn't answered at that time, can you tell me what's going on?
Yeah, you said the question wasn't answered at that time. My division, Capital Service Division, we engaged in a sewer design project for that airport area. We've got preliminary designs done. We actually completed design, and then it was put on the shelf. And it was a board decision at that time to hold off on moving forward with the construction until further notice. And that's where we are now. We're at more or less a holding pattern until we are given direction to move forward.
You did answer the question, and you told me later, but I was just wondering if there been anything further.
No, not at this time, and we're still at a holding period. But again, we do have designs on the shelf ready. We may have to dust them off if we were given the okay to go ahead with it, but we may have to dust it off, do some refining to see if renew some permits. But we are prepared to do it if we are given the direction to do so.
Just to follow up on that, there have been some recent developments regarding the airport and some properties around it. At our request, the county administrator has directed the Planning and Growth Management Department to initiate the airport overlay zone process. So that will be getting underway in the very near future. Anything else with regard to the airport, we really can't address at this time, but hopefully we can by the time the fall meeting rolls around. The overlay zone, what the overlay zone is you might be aware, the areas around the old commercial lands around the airport were folded into the Watershed Conservation District. And sort of the new thinking is that those lands should be returned to some commercial and productive use through an overlay zone, which would allow for commercial development. And not only the Bowserman holding lands, which are adjacent to the airport itself is exempt from the Watershed Conservation District, but the overlay zone would actually extend beyond Bowserman holdings into other lands. It has sort of yet to be determined. It's going to be part of the process. But the objective there is to allow for commercial development and also make the airport more attractive to potential investors. Well, there's been activity. There have been some very interested parties with regard to acquisition of the airport, and there's one in particular that we've been working with, and they've been going through the arduous process of getting vetted by the Federal Aviation Administration. And so that is moving forward, and we want to maintain that momentum, and we want to ensure that an acquisition, does go through, because we think it's important for sustaining Maryland Airport and actually expanding its functions and its position as an important economic development asset for the county.
And that this activity is a fulfillment of
You want to?
and that this effort that we've undertaken is in fulfillment of one of the recommendations in the 5-year strategic plan. And again, as I mentioned earlier, everything that we do is directly or indirectly related to executing on the 5-year plan and the 17 or 18 recommendations within that plan. One of those recommendations was to provide support to the Maryland Airport. What we're talking about here is that, in fact, and that is how we're executing on that recommendation.
I'd like to go back to the Waldorf corridor up on Old Washington Road. You're talking about the stormwater management. Did you have any intention of possibly doing anything with the stormwater management areas that are already existing? And then secondly, where do you think this stands in about 5 years from now?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Our consultants have been looking at the existing stormwater management structures or systems that's currently there. We're making sure that we incorporate those. Some of them, I've seen some preliminary plans, involves enlarging them. There will be a number of different stormwater ponds or features that we will try to, with the improvements of the corridor, enhance those as far as to have park benches around it. So to answer your question, yes, it does include incorporating those. And within 5 years, we basically hope to have the stormwater management systems constructed. That's one of the first systems that we need to do. When we're doing this corridor, we plan to have the construction implemented in phases, but one of the things that we need to do, we need to address the stormwater management for the entire corridor. Even with the first phase, it has to be a holistic system that we address all of it in the first phase, even though we may just construct the first phase.
Now, at that point, will the county take care of maintenance on the ponds?
There's two ways that that's usually done. Sometimes, depending if we acquire the property, yes, we will be responsible for maintenance. And there's also another program that we work with PGM. If it's a privately owned system or pond, we will enter a maintenance agreement with the homeowners, with the property owners, where they will be responsible for it. But that's more or less going to be a public-private partnership, and it depending on the specific case and location that would determine which method we use.
Good morning, folks. I'm Ray Curtis, a commercial realtor here in the county. And I had a property that's been listed for many, many years over there on Bumpy Oak Road, right beside the airport. It has been IG zoning for years and years and years. The owners of the property come to me all the time, Ray, what's going on with this WCD? It was down zoned for her, and I told her just hang in there, things are gonna get a little bit better. So now we're talking about this airport overlay. And I have a buyer right now that is chomping at the bit to buy this property. And what his use is for school buses. He wants a place to put school buses over there to serve the county. And I said, I believe in this overlay. You can't do it under that zoning as well. And I don't know if there's any consideration for something like that or not, but she just asked me with all this political things going on and new commissioners, I know we don't want to make this political, but at the same time, they come to me and says, Ray, what can you do? I mean, we've been paying on this property for years, and I have someone that's ready to go, and they're just in a stalemate.
There will be there's a planning commission meeting Monday the 23rd, this next Monday. And the issue of the overlay zone initiation process will come up during that meeting. So it will be, officially started now. What that looks like when the rezoning process is completed, and it is a rezoning process, so we'll have to go through that and take as much time as a rezoning would. And as you may or may not be aware, rezonings are somewhat rare in the county. But to get to your question, we can't really predict what the allowable uses, permissible uses will necessarily be when that process is completed. So when we talk about specific uses like a vehicle storage lot, I just don't know. Some of the proposals that are being put forward by potential property buyers, airport buyers, do involve commercial buildings outside the fence of the airport. So we do know, obviously, that would be something that we would push for. And it would be limited commercial, probably along the same density as a business park zone, because there are precedents that we can follow when we're going through this process. But it's going to be something that we'll be actively engaged in, and we'll be promoting various land uses that are going to be consistent with the vision for the airport's future.
Hello, Doug Roth. I'm the owner of Scary Strokes, which is a family entertainment center located next to the Radisson Inn off of Western Charles Parkway. It's not necessarily a question, it's more so a plea. We've been struggling since we've opened to kind of get the word out about our business. Today actually marks 9 months since we've actually unlocked the doors. We've tried different scenarios of marketing, whether it be billboards. We're actually going into the Clipper next week. We've hit schools, we've hit churches, but still we have a lot of people that walk through our doors who say, we've never been here before, we didn't know anything about this place. The biggest thing that we feel is our biggest challenge is signage. We are unable to put a sign on 228, and we are unable to put a sign on Western Charles Parkway, the two main artery roads. And for those who don't know, we're right next to the Radisson Inn. So unless you know that unless you know that we're there, a lot of people in the county don't even know we exist, and we've been around for 9 months. Now the summer's been good for us, but prior to the summer in April and May, our numbers were down, and we really believe it's just because people don't know about us. So I know that recently there's been some development or some property that's been sold actually in front of our building, and they're going to be developing there. I don't know if that's going to change the county's permit rules, but I just wanted to kind of ask for your help or assistance in trying to get us be able to allow, if you will, to put signage on one or both of those roads so we can get some exposure. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a note of that and keep in contact with you so that we can answer any questions about the changes that are happening there at the park, as well as look into what we can and can't do. Of course, the sign regulations are the regulations, and we have to work within those, but we certainly will explore with you what the options might be that would create a win-win. So let's keep in touch, and we will follow up with you, Lucretia and her team.
Any further questions?
Well, I tell you what, while you guys are thinking of your next questions, if it's all right with Darrell, I'm going to introduce the staff.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Again, you've met all of us up here, but I also want to introduce the rest of our team. Over there in the corner is Jennifer Reginald. Jennifer is our communications marketing coordinator, and she's the one who handles all of our marketing and social media and website, and today happens to be her birthday too.
Happy birthday, Jennifer.
Standing here in the blue jacket, holding on tightly to the microphone, is Michelle DeSoto. Officially today, Michelle's title is Redevelopment Project Coordinator. For the past few years, she's been working closely with Taylor Ewell, doing an amazing job supporting our redevelopment efforts. But as of Monday, Michelle becomes our new Economic Development Research Specialist. She has been promoted to that position. So we will have an opening for a redevelopment project coordinator, so keep your eyes on that if you know of anybody who would be really good at that job. Over here, we have Lacey Oliver. Lacey is our administrative associate, and she is the person who keeps us all on track and handles all of those difficult and confusing details that come and go as you run an office. Lacey always has all the answers to, Lacey, how do I? And she always knows. She keeps our schedules on track, and she takes very good care of Darrell and of me.
She's the boss of me.
Thank you. That's good to hear. And of course, you met Kim and Margaret, and then over in the corner here, also holding on tightly to the microphone, is Martin Prue. I think that after a year, you no longer get to have new in front of your title, but we still call Martin the new ag guy, but his actual title is Agricultural Business Development Manager. And Martin, this is a new position for Charles County Economic Development in recent history. It did exist decades ago, but Martin is working very closely with the ag-related industries. Martin deals with the farmers markets. He's working very closely with the planning department in creating some new zoning regulations that will allow for us to develop our craft beverage industry. And so I'm going to hand Martin the mic to talk about that.
Craft beverage?
Yes.
I get to talk about beer at 9 o'clock in the morning. Good morning, Martin Prue, Agriculture Business Development Manager with Charles County Economic Development Department. Since September 2017, we have been collaborating with Planning and Growth Management Department of the county to work on some zone text amendments to allow craft beverage producers, not only producers, but also the tasting rooms. Craft beverage as a whole in the state of Maryland has been growing exponentially over the past decade. And with Charles County only having one sole representative, a proud representative, a distillery, there's plenty of room for breweries and wineries here in the county with a great balance of the urban and the rural settings, your industrial manufacturing as well as your rural manufacturing, your farm brewing, your farm wineries. So as of right now, we have made it through the Planning Commission. Our zone text amendment was accepted as written to be recommended to the Board of County Commissioners. Now we're waiting to see when we will be able to offer a briefing and then hopefully a public hearing in the near future. We've also been working with some regional partners just to see what everybody else is doing. This is an evolving industry, so it's been new information every day, what's working, what's not working. The specialty crops, you're seeing more grapes, more hops grown in the state. I'm staying on top of that as well. Along with that, value added as a whole, the meat processing facility that SMATIC has been working towards, as well as some regional centers for production, any way to help the local farmers add value to their product and also ease their process so they're not driving 2-3 hours away.
Martin, would you provide a brief explanation as to why we needed the zoning text amendment for the craft beverage?
Absolutely. So the way it's written right now, a winery can exist in Charles County, but that's just for the production of wine. There's no way to invite the public as an ag tourism operation to your farm to showcase your product and kind of create an environment. As far as brewing goes, the way it's written, a brewing operation is limited to an industrial setting. So you can go in the back of a warehouse and you can brew your beer, you can distill. Again, you can't invite anyone in. That really limits the small business. Blue Dyer Distillery in Waldorf can sample products, can showcase, but there's still some developments going on a higher level as to how we can benefit these producers. So again, we're producing and recommending the zone text amendment to become a more stable environment, an inviting environment. Where the industry is now, it doesn't really pay to just go on par. We need to create some language that gives us a competitive advantage.
Thank you. Any further questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Stanley Katongle. I work with SMECO's Business Solutions Program. My question is, with innovation and new business coming in the area, you have to have a way of funding some of the projects. What we do is we help businesses kind of solve their issues through, we provide funding for their projects, efficiency projects, LED lighting, HVAC. What programs have you taken advantage of to help kind of kickstart some of those businesses coming in, looking to kind of innovate in that way, efficiency? Because we do give money for those kind of businesses, but we haven't really participated as much from this area. So we're trying to figure out how can we get involved, how can we help you kind of, we're on the same page, how can we help you kind of develop the businesses as they come in as well?
Well, we manage two loan funds at the Economic Development, and we have a business development loan fund and a targeted industry loan fund that focus on, technology, innovation, and all of that. So we do have those funds that we will, there's an application process, of course, but those would pretty much be not as stringent as the traditional banks would. So we kind of take a lot of other steps into working with these customers or clients in accessing capital. I also work very closely with other financial institutions and banks and other grant fund organization to help businesses too coming into the county. So there's a lot of programs out there that we may not in the economic development department have direct responsibility of approval, but I do have partnership out there that I work with other organizations to meet the needs of these businesses as well. So we can talk, after and kind of exchange information. Thank you.
Also, I want to mention that the county has enacted PACE as, or the PACE program here in Charles County, and what that does is allows a business or an investor to finance these upgrades through a PACE lender, a PACE-approved lender, and the debt for that financing is attached to the property bill, for the property tax bill for that. So it's an assessment that's made annually and that's paid with the property tax bill, and it stays with the property. So if that investor sells the property, that assessment sticks with it. And that is a way that an investor can more easily do these kinds of upgrades, apply like the LED lighting or more efficient windows. So we have enacted the PACE legislation, and we do work with the PACE program. The state of Maryland has a PACE program, and we are part of that program. But one of the things that I am delighted to see you here today, because so much of what we do in economic development has to do with partnerships, because we can't do everything. And so we have a lot of partners, and even when I look around the room, I see a lot of partners, including those representing our elected officials. We also have, for instance, Laura, and Laura, it's Wright is the last name. Laura's new. She is with the Workforce Development Office, and I'm on the Workforce Development Board. And Workforce Development Board is a very, very important partner, because this helps businesses with hiring and with training their employees. We do a lot of partnerships. So your program, your business, and say it again, it's a business solutions program. This is one of the partners that we're going to add to our toolbox, so that when we are working with businesses and they identify that this is one of their goals, we can make a phone call to you or make a referral to you. And that's a lot of what we do sometimes. Is I will get a phone call from a business saying, in fact, I recently got a phone call from a business saying we have some openings and we are desperately in need of people. And I sent an email over to Yvette Turner, who is our business services representative for the Workforce Development Board. And she immediately got in touch with that business and arranged to do a recruitment. And I even had one business think that Yvette was part of our team and part of our staff, because it was so seamless. So we want to make you a partner just like that we can make referrals to. So thank you so much for coming out today, and make sure that afterwards we all connect and trade contact information. Oh, we have a social media question. We did a Facebook Live before this started, and told people that they could put their questions up on social media.
Mm-hmm. And the question is to explain a little bit more about the Roundtable and the purpose and your goal.
Do you want to do that? Oh, you go ahead. We hold our quarterly business roundtables, quarterly, And the purpose is to stay in communication with our business community. And again, that's one of our recommendations in our 5-year strategic plan, is to engage with and to stay in contact with those of you who are the job creators, who are the investors, who are the people that we are working to support. So we hold these in this venue, the Waldorf West Library, which is a wonderful, wonderful facility, and hats off to the folks here who do so much to help us pull this off. But we do this every quarter. Well, 3 of the 4 quarters, I should say. We do it in January, in April, and in July. This meeting, where we do a brief 30-minute presentation and then 30 minutes of Q&A, or today we've done a longer Q&A period, so that we can answer your questions and tell you what we are working on and what we are doing to advance our strategic plan recommendations and other needs in the community. The fall quarter, we do our annual fall meeting, which is a much bigger event, which is the one that I had mentioned earlier, that's a 3-hour event where we do a really big, deep dive into the strategic plan to update what we're doing, as well as bring in some guest speakers and panelists to talk about some of the issues like we will be doing with workforce.
And to add to what Marcia has said, we learned from various focus group discussions 3 years ago that there was a concern of the business community that there is a gap between government and business. And that gap created concerns for the business community. And so a role or a purpose of the quarterly business roundtable, in addition to what Marcia has just said, is to begin to close that gap. We learned that we needed to communicate more with the business community, and that the business community wanted to communicate with government. So the purpose and role of these quarterly meetings, again, is to exchange information and ideas, to talk to one another, to learn from one another, and to begin to close that gap that existed. And we learned about that gap from the business community, and so this is an effort to do that. In addition, we created an advisory board, and we have an advisory board member in the back. Sheila is here. And the creation of the advisory board, again, came from the business community, because the business community wanted to see some representation of themselves involved on the government side. And so we created the advisory board, and that too acts as a function to begin to close the gap between government and business. Thank you. Any further questions?
Okay, good morning. I'm Dolores Moses.
Good morning.
And I'm a concerned citizen in our county. My question is, are you involved, or do you plan to get involved in help setting up more affordable and moderate housing for the senior citizens? That's a population, it seems nobody cares about them.
Yeah. Housing is a part of economic development. We learned through the Alice report a couple of years ago that, and we have known, that there is a need for affordable rental housing. That is something that we agree with. There is a need for affordable rental housing because we've learned that many citizens are paying a disproportionate amount of their income toward rent and housing. And that is a problem. And so as a part of our work, we have to, 1, acknowledge that that issue exists, and 2, we have to work to do something about that. And so from an economic development position, the creation of density and multi-purpose developments, which includes housing, and particularly affordable rental housing, is a position that we have advocated before the Board of Commissioners, and a position that we think that is needed. And so beyond that, that is that is all that I can say about that issue, but I do think that it is a concern. It is a reality concern. It's not just people feeling this way. And we also have to remember that the cost of housing, particularly rental housing, is very expensive. And our rental housing cost is just as high as Washington, D.C. And that's because we don't have enough rental housing. And as the population grows, and we know that our population is growing, we're going to need to address that issue.
Senior on your advisory board or committee or whatever as a spokesperson?
You said senior. Well, I'm senior. Marcia's senior. Taylor's senior. So I'm not sure what you mean by that, but
these senior citizens are not working. They are really retired.
Right.
And they still have to manage to make a living.
Yeah, and again, we have to, on the economic development lane, we have to stay in our lane. And I think a part of what you're raising are questions around community services, and that department is a more appropriate department to address those concerns and questions too.
Didn't answer my question. Do you have a member on your board, advisory board?
No, we do not have a designated, to use your language, senior citizen on our advisory board. No, we do not.
Our advisory board is based on industry because our advisory board is about business and business development and hearing back from the business community. So our advisory board, when we established it, we focused on representatives from target industries, and that's how our advisory board is structured.
Retire too. They become senior citizens as well.
But we focus on issues related to industry and not related to, what you're talking about is a very important part of the community, but it's not what the Economic Development Department focuses on. It's community services.
Thank you.
Hi, Deborah Jones, formerly with the Economic Development Department, now taking a hiatus from conventional employment. I want to return to the work discussion. John, you mentioned that there's design in progress with respect to the infrastructure. What does that mean for, and I know there's still a lot of work to be done, but what does that mean for that actual work starting, estimated time frame, and completing with the first phase of infrastructure? And then Taylor, how does that relate to the businesses that want to develop something? Are most of the projects that you're seeing the type that they need to have that infrastructure in place before those projects could go forward? So overall, what I'm getting at is, when can we actually expect realistically to see a project that conforms to the new design starting construction?
Okay, thanks, Deborah, and it's good to see you. As I stated before, we're facing some real issues, and that has delayed the progression of our design process. These issues, to resolve these issues, to be frank, it's going to take some capital. It's going to take some the acquisition of properties, which is going to take more funds. And that has a bearing on when we can actually progress. And I'll answer the first part of this question because it involves the infrastructure. The infrastructure improvements that we are undertaking, they are very critical for the progression of the various phases. Even for the first phase, there are certain infrastructure improvements must be in place before we can implement, or by the time that first phase can come online, everything is completed. So things can be done concurrently. The buildings or garages can be constructed, but the infrastructure must be in place before it's actually go into service.
I can think of at least one project which has gone all the way through the approval stages The only thing they need to proceed is the building permit. And as John said, they won't be granted a building permit until there's adequate infrastructure to serve the building. So that would be, in this case, sewer. But as you're probably aware, all these infrastructure improvements will happen concurrently. So when they're putting in sewer, the next phase will be, the roadway, the curb, the gutter, the buried utilities, and so forth. So it really is going to hinge on the timing of the infrastructure improvements. And it's not an easy area to work with because of all the fractured ownership, the narrowness of the 925 corridor, and the fact that we've had to, I guess, relocate the roadway one way or another to accommodate these multiple properties that are involved.
As well as dealing with as I stated before, dealing with the existing utilities. So I don't know if I quite answered your question, but as far as a time frame, that time frame cannot be narrowed down until we basically resolve the issues as funding so we can progress, get the additional land we need, and then we can resolve these infrastructure issues that we're currently facing.
So once you know the funding time frame, are we talking 2 years, 4 years?
I think once the funding is in place, we're looking at completion of the design. That may take another 3 to 4 months because we are pretty close. And then it becomes the infrastructure. We have to depend on our utilities, SMECO, natural gas, Comcast, Verizon, to relocate their infrastructure. That may take a while. And then as far as the construction of the roadway improvements, the water and sewer, that's a matter of once we get the funding, complete the design, and get it underway, that's 1.5 to 2 years once the construction starts.
Just briefly, Taylor, you had mentioned the overlay zone over around the airport. We have been very interested in growth on the western side of Charles County, and it's great to hear that we're talking about the overlay zone around the airport. Do you know whether or not, or can you tell us, is the land that was previously designated for the Science and Technology Park, will that be included in your recommendations for the overlay zone?
It's a good question, and I would say that a portion of it might be, and that portion would be comprise about 50 acres, but it's 50 acres of very developable land. But we have to, and we would certainly, we'll be putting in our recommendations, and I can say we would recommend that it be included in that overlay zone.
Well, there's more than just the 50 acres.
Oh, I'm aware of that.
200 acres that we spent $6.5 million. Connects to Route 210. So that's just a concern that we have, and we'd love to know when we can expect to see or hear if that recommendation will be included with the overlay zone.
And our philosophy is ask for more than you want or what you expect to get, and then see where it goes. It's going to be 50 acres that'll be under consideration.
That's not the question, dear.
Well, this has to go through a rezoning process. So we
can't say what will or will not be released, and to expect us to say that is not reasonable. All right, and so we've come a long ways with regard to the airport and what we've done with the airport. And we will continue to do that. And we have to go through a legislative process, which is what the overlay zone is designed to do. And so we cannot predict the outcome of that. We can only provide insight and influence on that, but we cannot predict the outcome. And it would be irresponsible of any one of us, to include me, any one of us, to try to do that when it has to go through a legislative process. Any further questions? Yes, sir. Oh, wait for the mic, please.
Sorry, for recording.
Sorry, thank you.
Yeah.
Henry Collins again. Just you brought up a point, Mark, on the breweries and wineries. Question: what is the water supply? I understand that there was an issue with that in the county. Has that, or will that be resolved in the near future?
So that has been a question we've been asking since the start of this, and with planning and growth management, we've We've gotten the go-ahead in everything that we've proposed. The other thing to consider is the rural settings. The farm breweries, obviously no water and sewer out there, and there have been solutions. There's been solutions in the state. Actually, out in the farm settings, the Maryland Department of Environment actually controls that. Land application. So especially with these farm operations, there are solutions to that, and we're well aware of those solutions. As far as in the urban settings, planning and growth management have been on board this whole time in proposing this language, and we have not found any issues with that.
All right, we have gone almost 10 minutes over time, and we will entertain one more question, if there are any. If there are none, then we will close the meeting. Are there any further questions? Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.